It's been a long time since I did a What's the Best, and this is only in the most technical way a What's the Best, because it's just covering the two combiners MMC has done so far, taking for granted that MMC has already made the best combiner of all time with their Bruticus. And honestly, this is really going to be more of a review for the Defensor than anything else. So this probably doesn't actually count as part of the series, but man, I do want to get back into the swing of making WTBs. So welcome to What's the Best? What's the best MMC combiner of all the ones that they've made? Which is only two. And also the best combiner of all time. But first, your likes! Please give and maybe subscribe. So rather than go over each of the individual bot modes, we are going to treat the vehicle modes as kind of the alternate mode for these guys. Since in essence, gestalts are more made of vehicles than they are made of smaller robots. Like, do you see tiny arms and legs, or do you see tires, car doors, and calves? You want a discussion of the robot modes, you can check out reviews of the individual members. And the alt modes of all of these are superb. The only one that looks dumb in the team is Groove, and that's just because he's a motorcycle the size of a Ford S10. Technically, Blades is also severely undersized. I mean, just look at the scale of his doors to the fucking minivan of the group. But it's less noticeable that big things aren't as big as they should be than when there are tiny things that are too big. Then obviously my real problem with this set is just that my first aid is off enough on the tolerances to make it impossible for me to get the rear together. This is not an issue I've ever heard of anyone else suffering, so I don't expect that you'll have this issue, and honestly, it's a little frustrating, but it's far from the worst example of QC I've ever suffered. And were it not for that, at the very least, as individual vehicles, every last one of these is basically perfect. Seam lines are minimal, the details are on point, the functionality of each of these is there, and they all feel premium and spectacular. Streetwise, I find to be the most boring of the squad. His detail and visual breakup just doesn't feel like the standard the rest of the team set, who all either have more paint or more different kinds of plastic, or just have more going on. Amazingly, for the set that actually made me like Defensor, the most nothing combiner, Streetwise feels the most like my actual conception of the group. Boring, uninspired, and lifeless. Which makes it real fucking weird that I bought two, right? Yes indeed, I also grabbed the toy-accurate version of this guy because there was just this period where I really did not want to have to get Groove. Groove is a weird, goofy-looking guy who turns into a vehicle that makes no sense as a leg. Though, to be fair, the whole combined mode configuration makes no sense. Like, both of the smallest guys form the shins. Meanwhile, the minivan, the fire truck, and the helicopter are just hanging out on top like nothing is wrong. They're dying down there. But even still, two cars makes way more structural sense than a car and a motorcycle. Then it turned out that Groove is like infinitely better than Streetwise, and now I'm down an extra $100 for like no reason. I mean, hey, at least the toy version is absolutely cooler than the normal guy. Then you have the big man, and Hotspot just makes for such an excellent fire truck. It's amazing. Like, it's so feature rich and perfect. This guy as a vehicle just makes for the best toy on his own. If you want only one of these, in all ways, Hotspot is the one to get. But the only one that I tell you to stay away from solo is Streetwise. He needs the rest of the team to be worth it. But the rest of them don't really need him, sadly. And we will give a brief look to the Combaticons, who I've covered before, and they're all showing their age a little. There's something about the finish for these guys that looks a bit less refined. These are all very good and very cohesive, but Swindle's parts forming and this set's overall worse tolerances than the Protectobots, my first aid being a fluke and notwithstanding, the edge is definitely going to go to the new guys, even if they are just inherently less awesome vehicles overall. Like, seriously, a touring motorcycle or a Jeep with a recoilless rifle mounted on the back? Which one is cooler? Then you got the combinations. And while there have been some real improvements MMC have designed in since their first combiner, I do have to say that I think I still prefer the Bruticus on this. Some steps in putting them together are more fun and more easy on Defensor, but the shin bots are almost too simple to prep for combination, and they are also way too hard to prep for combination. Let me explain. The bot transformations to become the shins are so easy that they're boring. However, the feet that come out of Hotspot for Defensor are the kind of things that haunt my nightmares. Watching a video, I can barely get this done, and there is like no way that I'm ever going to be able to remember how to do these on my own. It's like turn, flip, spin, flip, turn, spin, turn, spin, flip, turn, flip, spin, turn, flip, spin. And putting these back in is worse than getting them out. Meanwhile, getting Bruticus ready for combination is just easier. The leg bots feel a little more involved, the arms feel mostly the same, and the shins are producing the feet rather than horribly overcomplicating onslaught. Then combining them is about exactly as easy on both, but I'd say that I do however favor Defensor's connections. They feel a little bit sturdier, though surprise, surprise, the most annoying guy here to attach is Streetwise, who was just on a mission to be the worst at everything. The tabs that attach into the knees like to flip down while you're trying to insert them, and you need like several more hands than you have to prevent that. So while improvements have been made, this step in terms of enjoyment has to go to the older figures. But I do have to concede that the new method is markedly more solid. And I had a fan on the channel Reddit ask why I like these when their proportions look this way. And I have to agree, they look wonky as fuck on camera. In person, provided that you have them on a shelf below your eye line, they actually look solidly proportional. Legs are perhaps a smidge too long still, but to an inoffensive degree. And honestly, most other combiners are going for the overly long legged look anyways, so you aren't going to find much in the way of normal legs no matter where you search. And proportions aside, these rock. G1 Defensor was a goofy, stupid looking motherfucker, and this actually manages to make him look hardcore and beefy. And what's more, stable like no other combiner I've ever handled. This thing stands more confidently than figures an eighth his height with gigantic feet. Like, most of the time, I can just clunk this thing down and have no worry that it's going to fall over. And because of his insane inflappability, when I first got this thing in hand, I posted to Twitter, "Can your combiner skeleton do this?" And then I post him in the deepest lunge he can manage. And for some reason, because I think literally everyone constantly is trying to take what I say as uncharitably as possible, I caught so much shit for that because everyone just assumed that I was talking about Hasbro's combiner skeletons. And how dare I compare a multi-$100 set of figures with a, well, I guess also technically multi-$100 set of Hasbro figures, but they are probably about a third the cost. Guys, you realize that third party are the people who invented combiner skeletons, right? Like, that's where it comes from. I'm not an idiot. I wasn't comparing this to Chug. I was actually comparing it to figures that are more expensive than it. My point was to prove to those people who for some reason fucking worship parts forming because they are insane, that you don't need it to have it all. You can have individually perfect robot modes. You can have individually perfect alt modes. You can have the most easy fun combination if we ignore the feet. You can have a gestalt that is stupidly stable, never falls over, every joint is rock solid and holds all the weight it is asked to, and you can have it pose great. You can have everything without parts forming. There is no reason to make that compromise outside of just making the combined mode bigger, which that is such a caveman thing to obsess over. Big thing good. I have handled parts forming combiners of all varieties, and I have yet to handle one ever that is this thing's equal in any way. They are not more stable, they are not more accurate, they do not pose better, they can't even hold themselves together like this thing can. Their connections are almost universally worse in my experience. Honestly, in all those categories except for accuracy, where we could argue things this or that way, this is better than those in all regards. Like, some people told me that lunge wasn't very impressive, and yet no one could provide an instance where a skeleton combiner could equal this. So I think it's pretty impressive when it's the most stable combiner ever made. And honestly, this has such big, fun toy energy. I enjoy playing with this masterpiece combiner more than I do Legacy Menasor, or any of the Combiner Wars stuff, or any other combiner really. Normally, when a figure gets about this size, it becomes kind of a hassle to mess with. Stuff's just in the way, it's too heavy, so holding it up is a pain, and if it falls over, it will damage itself. But with this thing's rock-solid construction, everything about it is a breeze, and it just makes it so stupidly enjoyable to dink around with, and do some of the dumbest shit you can think of. Like, I love taking off the combiner mask because it's got this alternate head swap gimmick, and then just leaving him with Hotspot's tiny furious mug. I am going to kick your fucking ass. So this is fun, and it feels great, but it also looks fantastic. This is just layered in so much cool sculpting that I feel like I'm looking at one of those shots from the movie where it's panning up Unicron, and we're seeing all of his vents and ports. And it's got just enough paintwork to break up anything that's starting to get a little too monochromatic. Bruticus, on the other hand, let's be honest, he's just got the cooler look. The design is more varied and complex, the proportions are better, the colors are cooler, there are more unique elements and accents everywhere, the vehicles are more badass, he is just more diverse and interesting. Defensor is robin's egg blue, white, and black. This is dark blue, gray, light blue, purple, silver, yellow, green, brown. So sure, Defensor feels more like a unified team, but he's like doing a shitty version of what makes Devastator cool and unique. Meanwhile, Bruticus feels like a bunch of individuals who are teaming up despite the ways they clash. It's just got such presence, and the head is obviously way better. I mean, who can argue with Big Dork versus Awesome Mech Man? To be clear, this is brilliant, but I like this. However, it has aged at this point. This is pretty stable for a combiner, but Defensor isn't pretty stable for a combiner, it's incredibly stable by any figure's standard. And the joints almost 201 are worse than on Defensor. I appreciate that the feet are made out of the leg bots, but in terms of construction, MMC changed the game with their Assaultus, and they just changed it again with their, oh so creatively named, Defense Titan. And while the old figure had the shoulder cannons that you could aim, this has the popped collar that you can deploy so he can act like a rad guy. The other gimmick is definitely the better one. The final gimmick this has is not doing the stupid shit with the shoulders that you are supposed to do. Look, Defensor was always lame, and G1's attempts to give him cooler design elements only made him lamer. Just leave these closed up like any sane person. But then we get to the poseability, and this is... It's just the most posable combiner of all time. Actually, starting with the feet real quick, just to help with some later stuff, he's already extremely stable, but you can untransform the feet to give him the widest standing base of like any figure ever, meaning that even in the most insane poses you can figure out, he will be rock solid. Head has a small up and down, and a full rotation. Plus, you can untransform it for both a really solid up and down, and you can untransform the torso for even more. Some better looking than normal hot rod shoulders that pull a 90 and do allow for some cheating in an upwards-outwards range. Intentionally designed forwards butterflies for a small range, which you can cheat for a ton more, but this will start disassembling the figure if you aren't careful, so just open up the backpack to avoid any trouble. First aid elbow pulls slightly better than a 90, but the blade's elbow almost goes maximum. Hands rotate despite being made out of two separate halves, and every finger is fully articulated in every range they should go. Plus, some specially designed hands for palm action. Serious ab crunch and waist swivel. Hips are unimpeded forwards, slightly to the sides, and seriously impeded back unless you untransform the ass skirt, which gives you a ton of range. Both knees pull a bit more than a 90, and feet with a rotation and a tilt up and down, plus the aforementioned expanding foot base. However, the toe tilt up is the one joint on this set that's loose, and you should probably tighten that up if you know how. That part is the one place this thing is willing to give out on you. Meanwhile, the Bruticus has generally worse elbows and shoulders, plus less articulated hands, so they are relatively on par, though the new guy definitely has more. And the stability difference between them is night and day. Again, stable for a combiner is typically something that means a very different thing from what stable for a normal figure means. And in this case, yeah, it still does, because it's more stable than a normal figure. And that just leads to you being able to pose it more freely and far better, even if the points of articulation aren't that different in this thing's favor. Seriously, it blows my mind that people have been lying to themselves for years that the only way to get stable joints was by making them on parts forming pieces. Like, the argument has always been, you need dedicated parts that way you can make them tighter than normal. But we've all handled figures with normal sized joints that could hold up like 10 of themselves. It's almost like quality control was always the problem, and not the fact that they weren't using parts that could do the jobs on their own. I've said it before, and I will say it until I die. If you want a skeleton combiner, you don't want a combiner. You want an action figure that just looks like the combiner you want. Most of what makes combiners awesome is not the size, but that it's a bunch of characters coming together to become one, and how all that was engineered and works. By adding in parts forming pieces, you are throwing all of that away. The whole reason it's cool is gone. It's like having a picture of an awesome thing rather than the thing itself. And look, it pains me to say it, but Defensor beats Devastator and is the best combiner of all time. It's not perfect, but this has the edge in the individual alt modes. The individual pop modes are also probably better, even if they're more boring. It gets the point for stability and poseability, while Bruticus gets the point for the cool factor and the ease of combination, while they're kind of equal on accuracy. But to be clear, these two are still the number 1 and number 2 best of all time, and even with how good this is, the Bruticus is so badass. I wish that thing was as rock solid as this is. What a glow up from a figure I absolutely did not want to the best combiner ever released. This is just what you've always wanted since you were a kid. It's everything that you imagined. The giant toy where all the figures worked perfectly every way they were supposed to, and they all fused exactly like how it looked like they always did, with no cheating, where it somehow only becomes more fun in its giant mode rather than less, like what usually happens with figures of this size. It is the combiner for your inner child, the dreamer who always knew exactly what they were desperate to see. I don't know how to say it better than, it does the thing. It is the thing. It's everything you could ever hope it would be. It puts everyone else to shame. Why would you do it the way they've been doing it when this was always an option? The MMC Bruticus and the MMC Defensor are two unrivaled achievements in the Transformers. They are what they always should have been. And I am struggling to think of a way to say that as emphatically as it deserves to be said. If you are at all interested, do not miss these sets. And before we go, let's thank a channel backer. And this time it's the Transformers Bloke with Revenge of the Fallen Optimus. It strikes me only now just how many of my fans' favorite figures of all time are some flavor of movie Optimus. I wonder how many of these I've covered from the wheel at this point. And you know what I can say about this thing is that it looks interesting compared to a lot of movie Optimus figures. It's just got some quality to it where it's like, yeah, there's a lot going on here, but it's doing it well. And the paint job clearly they put money into. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.